Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Um, for the accountability section, or the catch-up section, I should just call it the catch-up section. Um, we've got an update here. Probably not much of an update though. Um, my computer still was having trouble after taking out the short-circuited RAM, and I had to uh, the NVIDIA video card driver was crashing, but it was at least giving me a blue screen, whereas the shorted out RAM literally was shutting off the computer, or not booting the computer after the initial shut off of the computer. So they're giving away 1,000 gems because now they've had 20 million downloads. It was probably less than a month ago that they had 10 million downloads. And you have to hit the back button here. It feels like there should be an OK button there. So apparently some new gates have also been added. Solo mode. Let's see. With new archetype loner deck in hand, you take dueling experience to another level by uncovering hidden stories. Okay. The sales periods for the following selection packs have been changed. Rival of Legends install at Force before it ended March 22nd. Now it ends April 3rd. Seems like they're just giving you more time, which maybe means that they bought themselves some time. And then there's some text things that have been patched. This seems like a more reasonable amount of updates, honestly, compared to what we've had before. So you log in once per day to get the 1,000, which really it should just be in the gift box, and they failed to do anything with the gift box. 50 for logging in today. I spectated the duel last night. So yeah, my computer's video card was crashing. I think what happened, and this is the current theory, and I really just don't know. And if anything, I've just, like, instead of spending the last 7 years plus making a YouTube channel, had I been just building computers and PCs, I probably would have a lot more experience and have that one weird time when something happened similar. So yeah, we do have a new single player mode. I'll make a special video on that and put that out with the other story modes. They're gonna have to bend over backwards to find other excuses to give us 1,000 XP though, going forward. And we kind of need to get 1,000 XP at least once every 3 to 6 months. Besides just the login daily, do the daily quest stuff. But yeah, the current theory, and I'm probably pretty scatterbrained right now, is that when the RAM crashed, it corrupted Windows files and the video card driver files in particular. There's this long command that there's this long set of commands that I'd never even heard of. The first one is SFC and then a bunch of slashes to scan the file contents of Windows and make sure everything is correct. And so I ran that, and it specifically said no, there are corrupted files, and we fixed it. Then there's this DISM command and 3 different versions of this command that I ran, and I ran all of those, even though none of those found any errors after the first initial error. And then there's then I reinstalled the NVIDIA drivers, which one hopes that this isn't a case that somehow NVIDIA being hacked has somehow allowed GeForce Experience to download and install some kind of intentionally corrupted driver that's trying to break things. I don't think that's the case. I also unplugged and reseated the power cords going to my video card in case there is just a video card thing. I also have like a bent, when I initially moved my CPU case because of the first short circuit, I bent a DV display port cord, and it still works, but it's all bent to hell, and I need to replace that. Now I was afraid maybe that was short circuiting it or causing problems, and that could be it too. But yeah, I now have like 2 power cords going to the 2 6 or 8 pins, or 6 plus 2 pins, 12 volt power supplies to my RTX 380. I also, so maybe the power cord was loose. If the power cord was loose though, it would have had to been loose for a long time. Apparently one of the case fans was plugged in the wrong way this whole time, so that could have been it. But like, part of the problem with this motherboard, and this is something that I've learned, is if you have a motherboard that has LEDs or you have a case that doesn't have a speaker, you need to just buy a little buzzer speaker. You can get a whole pile of them cheap from Amazon, and you need to just have a buzzer plugged into that speaker, because there is a distinct possibility that for 2 years straight my motherboard has been trying to say, hey, this is overheating, hey, something's wrong, and I've just not been getting that message. And the LED lights and the post lights and all of that aren't as good, because if a problem starts after your initial setup and everything looks good and then something happens later, you're never going to take off the case and just start looking at LED lights that are on the motherboard. My motherboard doesn't have any LED lights or anything like that. Ideally, these would all be, there would be some way in which a system message overlay could be put over every display port, every display HDMI output from a BIOS. But I don't think there really is a system like that. And that doesn't really help if your video card's not working anyways. So it's been a nightmare, frankly, and the danger here is that I am potentially going to have to go back to my old computer or justify buying a whole new brand new computer 2 years after just buying a brand new computer, because I'm gonna have to throw out everything just out of an abundance of safety, like absolutely everything, like no transferring of the video card, GPU, RAM. At the very least, video card would be particularly a loss there. No, really wouldn't even want to transfer over the mem sticks, the NVMe SSDs. Yeah. I could still use the case, certainly. Like, there's no way the case is short-circuiting things, unless there was some kind of screw there. And if there was a screw, it would have, I think, already short-circuited 2 years ago. But yeah, I'm hoping, and there is a decent chance that it was just Windows being corrupted and drivers corrupted that caused all the problems after I took out the bad short-circuited RAM. So it was just a secondary effect of the first issue. And certainly RAM could have a corrupting effect to a file being open, although you would think that video drivers and things like that would be read-only, but perhaps when a computer just powers off, the NVMe really can corrupt a file. I guess it probably can. I wouldn't be surprised if flash memory, NVMe, SSD type memory, if you just instantaneously power off a file, probably could corrupt a file that was opened even for reading, because that file being open only for reading very possibly has to be rewritten, because that's certainly how flash memory used to happen, is that in reading a value you had to write the value back to it to maintain it. Or at least sometimes you would have to rewrite the value on later technologies. But the good news is I was able to play LEGO Worlds and do a full hour of LEGO Worlds after all of that. I turned on the GPU fan to max, and I have all the other fans, the case fans, the CPU fans all and max. I will want to see if I can cause it to crash, but also I'm not 100% certain that this isn't, the LEGO Worlds isn't just such a broken game that it's causing crashes in itself, because LEGO Worlds is buggy. It is an unfinished garbage game. It is LEGO trying to be a Minecraft clone and failing miserably at even being a Minecraft clone. And the way you engage with LEGO Worlds, which is much closer to building Legos, which is something I've always felt like I'd like to experience, it's just not fun. Like, if anything, LEGO Worlds has taught me Legos should be done in the real world if you're going to build Legos, and TT Games is right to make their LEGO games very un-Lego-like, and just have minifigs running around smashing things made out of Legos to get studs, and then when occasionally walking up to a bouncing pile of Legos pieces and holding down the B button to build them. There is something that's fairly obvious to that too. Like, if you're really building a Lego set, you're doing a very calm, tactile, physical action with hands and eyes in the real world. It's slow, it's kind of boring. It's not the experience you would expect to have in video games form, where video game forms are almost always high action, running, jumping, punching, kicking, shooting guns. So when LEGO Worlds tries to put you into this build mode where you are placing a single brick one at a time, it is just a awful thing that I just don't want to really engage with while playing it. And I checked the stats on LEGO Worlds, and like barely 20% of people even got 15 out of 100 gold bricks in the adventure mode. There wasn't even supposed to be an adventure mode. It was supposed to all be an open sandbox mode from the beginning. It was supposed to be like this MMO, but yeah, it fails miserably. And if LEGO cannot unseat Minecraft, then pretty much nothing will ever unseat Minecraft. Terraria, doing a 2D style game, I think is probably the closest competitor to Minecraft, and even at that, Terraria being 2D is probably not that interesting, nor do I think Terraria has as many like YouTubers playing it these days, or as many mods and things. LEGO Worlds might have succeeded if it was programmed in Java instead of whatever awful engine TT Games was still using. But there's definitely worlds I went to where bits of Lego pieces just did not render into the world, and it's real hard to believe that is because of a video card driver or a video card failing or corrupt RAM or anything like that. Like, it could be corrupt RAM, but I kind of doubt it. I should say that normally you don't need 2 power cords of the 6-pin, 6+2 pins plugged into a single video card. Like, electronically, yes, having two wires would put the current across 2 wires, but the wires are usually thick enough and good enough anyways, and the power supplies are usually good enough anyways for it not to matter. In most cases, power supplies are going to have one rail on all of its connectors if it's a module connector, or all of its wires anyways, so putting 2 wires is really not going to affect much. But I am certainly just changing everything, which is bad science. I should change one thing at a time to try and actually diagnose the problem. And I'm more interested in ensuring it works versus figuring out what was wrong. There is an opposite argument, certainly, though, that if you've got the wires, you might as well use them. They will make more of a mess in your computer case, which would restrict airflow a little bit, but I don't think airflow is really a concern at all. More than likely, it was never a power issue at the first place, because I actually turned on the computer with the power plugs not plugged in on the GPU, the 12-volt powers, and it literally just said plug in the power cords on the screen. So it knew what was happening, the video card did, and displayed very basic text to tell you what was going wrong. Alright. See if that destroys his strategy. Let me stop whining about my computer. I'm almost certainly going to kind of rage quit on LEGO Worlds. There's no way I'm gonna make it to 100 gold bricks and try to get everything. Some of the achievements are very random because the worlds are kind of random, and there are like dungeons in it that I haven't even seen yet, but it seems like the core final gameplay mechanic that most people didn't even make it to it is that you are supposed to be finding dungeons in certain biomes, and at the end of each dungeon you get a gold key that gives you a gold Lego piece or some rare Lego piece. And yeah, that sounds incredibly grindy. The interface on LEGO Worlds with a mouse and keyboard, where it really probably should have been a mouse and keyboard, is awful. And even with the controller, it's still pretty awful. If you just wanted to build something out of Legos, you'd do much better to use some of the other software out there that is just around the idea of, here's how you would make a 3D simulation of a Lego build, and some of them immediately link to things like brick links where you can buy those pieces after you've made the build virtually. Some of them even allow you to make instructions, so you could have instructions to potentially even gift a build like that, where LEGO Worlds doesn't have any of that. Like, In fact, none of the Lego games, kind of, maybe for better or worse, have ever connected to the real world Lego sets available for purchase, and Lego puts things for purchase and then sells out so fast I don't even know how you could make a system like that. That would it would have to definitely be kind of a live service, constantly being updated thing. Yeah, but I really do think that the lesson to learn is Lego games don't work. Games with Lego characters and Lego pieces work. Minecraft barely even works, in my opinion, as it is, and if it didn't have its massive fandom and the first version of Minecraft came out today, I doubt too many people would have been that interested in it. I think we probably are past the point in which YouTubers or Twitch streamers can get people interested in a game that's slightly lacking, like Minecraft. Where in the past, I think you might have been able to get away with more. Let me just check our video game news and see. Like, I didn't reprogram my macro program, so I'm closing things that look like they might be old things. Although, at least for Video Games Chronicles, ooh, I am in the wrong setup. Can I change a scene in the middle of... Alright, well let's see what happens here. Scene. Apparently that works. So apparently you can change scenes in the middle of live streaming and recording. That's new for me. I think it messed up my timer, but that's fine. I'll just use the in-game timer. We've been going 25 minutes. So then if I come over here, yep. Following years of delays, Ubisoft is seeking testers for Skull and Bones. It really has been years. Like 2018, we're at 2022 now. I guess we should have probably applaud Ubisoft for still trying. It would have been fairly easy to just say no and abandon Skull and Bones at some point. Let's see. Oh, this is annoying. He's just gonna discard cards and cancel things, isn't he? So I should have played this first. Whatever. Let's just learn. Video Games Chronicle says the Dutch court has overruled the decision to fine EA $10 million for FIFA loot boxes. The highest administrative court rules FIFA loot boxes aren't a game of chance. Which this is kind of the problem, certainly, is that even if there is some kind of decision, they can just fight it in courts and tie it up in courts forever. Whereas I think should say it's fairly obvious loot boxes are a game of chance, and that they're just being pedantic about specific wording and specific words and laws. And justice should not be word games, in my opinion. I would rather have mob rule than the justice systems playing world games, as they often do. Like, if it looks like a duck, if it smells like a duck, it's a duck. And frankly, I would that is where having a representative government is supposed to come into play, and it really doesn't, because politicians get bribes from rich people and oligarchs and don't represent the feelings or the desires of the people they're supposed to represent. But if they did, they would definitely have come back with saying, hey, if there's a law you think that these people have violated citizens, or if you think we need a new law because what EA is doing is wrong, we'll pass that law, we'll make that law. I mean, even if we were going to have like direct democratic votes on it, there is a potential future where that could be done, certainly. There could be a case where court cases were decided by a jury of all your peers, in a sense, in which all citizens and all mob rules voted against them after a live-streamed court case. That would certainly be dangerous for the first few hundred court cases, but at a certain point people would get bored with voting. And only really smart or concerned parties would start voting, I would imagine, or crazy people. But yeah, there is a future where the court cases, decisions could be live streamed, and then votes electronically could be collected. At a certain point, you vote with your dollar by not buying the EA loot boxes, but they at least believe that that doesn't matter, because there's enough addicted people and whales out there to make the money. In a funny way, for every crown prince around the world that can put $10,000 into something like FIFA loot boxes, they are single-handedly making a scenario where EA is getting the message that loot boxes are profitable and ruining the world for everyone else. That is in one way a problem with large disparities in wealth, is that if you have a rich person somewhere and they're doing something very crazy, then a lot of people follow that lead. I think the Tesla creator is kind of a great example of that. I heard, laid off half of their staff at the Hypertunnel company. And that Hypertunnel idea certainly came from the Tesla owner. Well, I forget his name. And he was rich from like his parents' apartheid diamond mines. So, yeah. Whereas, had there been like a direct vote, or less of a disparity between the average person's amount of wealth and the amount of Tesla's, the Tesla owner's amount of wealth, even before he started Tesla, I think fewer people would be interested in making a hypertunnel. On the other hand, that might be an argument that wild and crazy innovations and experiments would just never happen. And it still probably wouldn't have changed too much, because the Tesla creator is extremely successful in getting people hyped on his ideas as a pitchman. So yeah, but to get back to what I started talking about, the idea of EA loot boxes not being gambling is a pedantic, stupid argument. And as I've gotten older in life, my tolerance has only decreased for pedantic, stupid arguments. I am and I think most people probably should be this too. I'm a very intolerant person to ideas that on the face of them make absolutely no sense and are ridiculously dumb. That comes from a level of confidence in my own intelligence and my own common sense. It probably comes from some unwillingness to accept new ideas. I am willing to accept new ideas at a certain level, but if somebody said the moon was made out of cheese, you don't have to entertain that statement any further. And often people will say all ideas or opinions or all feelings are equally valid, all ideas are equally valid, and it's just not true. Like there are things that every single person knows to be true. They've been educated their entire life to know certain things. They've experienced the effects of those things. They know these things to be true, like up is down, black is white, things like that. The chances that you got it wrong are so insignificantly small that there's no reason to engage with people that are effectively trying to gaslight you into being insane, like them. But yeah. That if something does not pass the smell test, and there's no reason to engage with it. Like, whereas I feel like courts do engage with that a lot. And of course, there's a problem of judges then just kind of making decisions. And usually you want judges in criminal cases to act out of an abundance of caution and let some obvious criminals go if the prosecutors can't prove their case. But it's an unequal justice system around the world when you can just hire fancy lawyers to come up with fanciful arguments. Moving on, because I don't really want to get into a ramble here. U.S. regulators are investigating possible insider trading at the Activision-Microsoft deal. Shareholders could make $60 million on shares bought days before the merger plans were revealed. It's not just that the shareholders bought them. It's 3 specific shareholders that have kind of direct connections, which it's not uncommon, frankly, for shareholders or friends and family of CEOs and people to own shares in each other's company, which arguably, I think even for rich people, it should be made illegal to own individual shares. Like, you could probably protect a lot of get rid of a lot of insider trading if there was only markets, portfolios that could be bought. So there would be like a video game portfolio, and instead of saying well, I've got this hot tip about EA, so I'll buy on Microsoft and I'll buy on Activision Blizzard. But yeah, I meant to say I got a hot tip on Activision Blizzard, so I'd buy Activision Blizzard. If instead they had to say, well, I've got this hot tip on Activision Blizzard, I'll buy on the video game portfolio in general, that would at least reduce the amount of profits they could get from insider trading. And if the portfolio people that make the portfolio were banned from owning shares or getting commissions, and they had to be paid a standard yearly salary, then that would reduce their desire or their reward for insider trading. Certainly. All insider trading is obviously solved if we simply got rid of the concept of stocks, which I think that's the better move. Like, small to medium businesses only. If you can't fund your business through bank loans, and you have to start selling to shareholders, and then you have to change how you do business to satisfy shareholders, well, those aren't businesses that provide real value to society. Like, you are only hurting society 100% of the time once you go public, because you have to at that point, because of the fiduciary duty, which they call it that to really hide the fact that fiduciary duty really means legally required to be greedy. But yeah, your legally fiduciary duty is to just make more and more profits by sucking as much money out of the actual end users and consumers as possible. And that only hurts society. It doesn't help society. It creates greater wealth inequality. But yeah, I don't know if this article goes into specific details, but Barry Diller, Alexander von Furstenberg, and David Gaffin, I think all have kind of direct connections to Diller. Previously served on the Coca-Cola board of directors with Bobby Kotick. Geffen is a longtime friend of Diller. So if the tip was given from Bobby Kotick to Diller, then Geffen also passed it along. And it might even be a case that Alexander von Furstenberg got no tip and just got lucky and is now getting swept up for insider trading. I wouldn't be surprised if 2 out of the 3 of these people get caught and have to pay like $1 million fine. Is the question here is, are you going to fine them $120 million for insider trading at minimum, or is it going to be $1 million fine for it? But yeah, it definitely seems like there's smoke there of insider trading on top of other complaints. Of course, they might investigate this and find out, no, they just all got lucky. It's hardly a case that there weren't awful stories out there about Activision Blizzard, and anybody who wanted to bet the dip or buy the dip on Activision Blizzard would have been doing it at that time. That's the reason in the first place that Microsoft is trying to buy Activision Blizzard. So that may be the problem with catching anybody as far as insider trading in general, is that if there's any bad news anywhere, and there's always going to be some sensationalist journalist article, like, people can just claim, well, I read this public article and thought people would react, so I bought the dip. And it becomes very, very difficult to prove things, particularly if you're having private conversations face to face. in and not doing it by email or phone and not leaving any kind of paper trail. If you're talking in code like the mob, it becomes even more difficult to prove. Moving on, Video Games Chronicles says 8 more women accuse PlayStation of sexism. New counts filed with the court in relation to a proposed class action lawsuit. Now, the way I heard it explained is that there was a chance of this class action lawsuit being denied because there was only like one person who had filed it, or that there had been... Yeah, see, last month Sony denied Majo's allegations and requested the lawsuit be dismissed over lack of evidence to support her claims. So, this lawsuit was potentially on the rocks, and then 8 more women come out. Now, on one argument, you could say they came out because these things had happened and they saw that Sony was going to potentially get away with it. On the other hand, Sony might very well try to float the idea that these 8 women all are lying, and they're just super woke people that don't care if they lie as long as Sony gets punished for this perceived injustice. Which, undeniably, there are SJWs out there like that will straight up lie and claim something happened to them when it didn't, just because they feel like that's the right thing to do. Jesse Smollett is a slightly different story, and he was just sentenced. But yeah, they're according to the legal decision that has already come down. Officially, Jesse Smollett was a woke SJW who wanted to get a better raise for his acting career and lied about being assaulted. But the numbers, I will say, don't really add up. The complaints are going to be kind of hard to prove as actual discrimination, as I feel like all discrimination is probably fairly difficult to do that. Like, there was a story I heard of they had a session in which they went over 70 employees as to whether to give them promotions or raises or something to really evaluate them, and there was only 4 women out of the 70 employees that were considered. Maybe that's in part because women just weren't working for Sony Interactive Entertainment in the first place, but then there was a lot of talk in these sessions, allegedly, of the family life and personal life of the females, where none of that was happening with the males. Well, remember, you do have to remember that Sony is based off of a Japanese company, and sexism definitely exists in Japanese companies. So it's totally believable that culture would be passed down from the Sony of Japan to the Sony of California. But yeah. As a side note, I saw a plot as far as women in computer science over the years, and they used to be really high, and then somewhere around the 40s or so it went really low and women stopped being in it. And that's because at that time, it was women punching in punch cards and typing in teletypers or typewriters to program giant computers, and it became grunt work instead of it being high-level mathematic work and concepts of programming. And that is probably where the disparity between the women in computer science happened. Before then, like the first programmer, late Ada Lovelace, like wasn't female. First programmer ever. But there's long since been a disparity and a growing boys club, or an established boys club in computer programming, and particularly video games. And we are not to the point where that has been fully addressed and fully fixed. In part, working in video games is kind of just a bad career move for females or males or anybody, so a lot of it, I think, does boil down to women being smart enough to realize that being a video game programmer or working in the video game industry is not as good as far as the hours and the pay compared to working at a company like Google or any other computer science type company that isn't video game related. So I do think that this class action suit, when you have like 8 women willing to put their name down on paper and potentially ruin their careers and ruin their credibility, that seems like a lot. Yeah. I tend to lean towards believing accusations more than disbelieving them, unless it's a case where there's been 3 separate accusations that are getting all merged together by a questionable source like GameDeveloper.com, and then they're trying to make it seem like there's a lot more things. Or it's a case like the Ubisoft issue where it's 2 questionable journalist sites in France that are putting out articles, and it's an IT department refusing to do their job because they feel like another employee was not punished enough for doing something inappropriate. Which, like, the core complaint of copying and pasting employees' heads onto porn stars' bodies and making joke pictures and sharing them around, like, it's a legitimate complaint. It's an unprofessional activity for sure. Then that the employee should have been warned or punished at some level. But to then use that as your flippant excuse as to why you're not doing your job, and it is ridiculous. And in a funny way, it's kind of anti-even union, because, like, it would be a very weird scenario for union members or union to say, we want this other associate level employee punished. Otherwise, we're going to do this pseudo strike. It's not a real strike. I think they may have tried a real strike at some point, but it didn't last. That is one of the things that happens, and you just have to live with when working a union job, is that unions will protect the worst as much as they will protect the best of the employee associate level pool. So you very well may have some garbage employees that you're working with. Moving on though. Nintendo has halted all shipments of software and hardware to Russia. The company has suspended shipping, citing logistical problems. Nintendo being very careful not to be an activist like any of the other companies. By the way, my Nintendo Switch did arrive yesterday, and literally the only thing I could do with it is make a Mii. It is shocking that there is not a demo pre-installed in there, or that there isn't a big warning sticker on the box saying you need to buy a game. It is very small, the Joy-Cons in my hands. I have never seen a Switch in live. I've only seen them in pictures, and with the cameras zoomed in, it is like shockingly small how the Joy-Cons are. And I was surprised to find out that one Joy-Con has like an IR remote, but the other doesn't. And then like one side has the buttons and control stick too far to the left, and one has the buttons and control stick too far to the right, and neither one of them have them in the middle where you might want them. The touchscreen is small, but there is also an issue I think you would run into where if you made the Joy-Cons, the touchscreen any bigger, even my pretty big adult hand thumbs would not really be able to touch the touchscreen everywhere. But I don't know if that's ever been the case, is that you were supposed to be able to hold the touchscreen and tap anywhere on the screen at the same time. Clearly, it's so obvious that they threw everything at the wall. That you get these like wrist straps for using the Joy-Con separately. You get a plastic handle to make a different kind of controller, and you can attach it to the side. It's so obvious that they threw everything at the wall, and there's just so much extra plastic there. Although if you had eliminated all the extra plastic components and sold those separately, you still would probably be paying nearly the exact same price for the product, because the real price and expenses is going to be the internal stuff. But yeah, it's very, very surprising that there's not some kind of intern-made demo or just demo of games there. And it immediately wants to connect to the Wi-Fi and turns on the Wi-Fi for kind of a bad reason, I would argue. Like, particularly if you're not going to get a Nintendo Live account and not going to get the online service, there is no reason not to turn on the airplane mode and then turn off the airplane mode for the controller, so you can actually use the controllers. But yeah, just to save battery life, it would make a lot of sense. I also typed in my Wi-Fi password wrong, and it gave me a very ambiguous message where really it should have just been able to say the password was wrong. So it's not a particularly good setup experience compared to previous consoles that had no setup experience, so you just put a cartridge in and go. There is definitely a real danger, though, that I'm going to spend too much time playing Switch games and not really be able to do anything. And if my computer broke and I just lost the interest in making YouTube videos, that, like, I could probably play Switch games quite a bit. As for this article, yeah, Nintendo's halted all shipments. I can't help but suspect that there are going to be some companies that try to even trick the Russian docks and the Russian stores to send back equipment or send back money make orders that they never had any plan on fulfilling. Like, I mean, all's fair in love and war at a certain point, and if I was running the business, I would have had like my region managers calling them and going, "No, we still plan on shipping. Please make orders. Make orders now before it gets too difficult for us to deliver it." And I would just try to suck out all equipment and all money, all value as possible. And you know, it wouldn't have been the wrong thing to do, as far as capitalism is evil in general, because on the other hand, you have Russia potentially talking about making piracy legal. And piracy was effectively legal in Russia already, but just codifying it and saying, yeah, we're gonna just straight up steal and pirate software because these people are sanctioning us. And that's a long run tradition, certainly, of stealing things and not honoring copyright in the middle of conflict. Yep. Moving on, Gamescom 2022 will be an in-person and online event. Organizers have confirmed. If that interests you, I don't know if anybody should really be going to Gamescom events quite yet, but I think most people are ready to go back to events. I did hear that there's a lot of people now that are getting like bad flus and ending up on ventilators because of just the flu being particularly bad and getting pneumonia. And so there might be some knock-on effects of this new normal that still makes it fairly dangerous to get sick on anything. Guess you play this. Okay. Just in there. The Lego Princess Peach and Peach's Castle have been officially announced, and it is in the little blockheads style. So, like Mario, who has a little screen here, you can't even see it. There's a little screen here on their chest, and this is in their little playset thing. So, let's see if we can. They had already. Let's just hit play there. Let's see if this actually plays. So it was all these little play sets, and they would score points, and they'd play with each other, and there you can see a screen, and it's just like, I just don't think any of this is particularly that good, nor do I feel like it's particularly that Lego-y. Like, and I know it was Nintendo that wanted the Lego stuff to be like that. By the way, since March 10th had happened, Mario Day, they did announce that they're going to make a Universal Studios Nintendo World. I think in Florida, but maybe in Hollywood. So they are going to bring it over. The Nintendo World was pretty popular in Japan, and I imagine the Nintendo World in America will be similar concepts, but probably bigger with more rides. That's generally how it goes, is that if there are the same theme type worlds from Universal Studios, the rides tend to have a variety of things around them. Yeah, and that video didn't even show the Princess Peach's castle. This is bigger, and I appreciate that. It just doesn't feel particularly Lego-y. It's not big enough, it's not detailed enough. And then there was a real question as to when this is supposed to, which game this is supposed to really represent, because you have like a toadette here, and you have a yellow pipe here, and then you have the Koopa kids here. So it's kind of all over the place as a set. Yeah. It definitely is not going to be as big and as detailed. The Peach's Castle expansion set is $130, whereas it was like $250 for the NES and TV Lego kind of expert build set. And yeah, there's definitely a difference in quality there. Well, I've lost. Unless I can get the field spell. Okay. Play this. Activate this. Don't activate that yet. Go ahead and take this. Activate this. And maybe at this point we activate this. So the question now is, will this destroy? I think this will be destroyed. Which means we can then play this. And then do this, and then do this. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle, Logan Paul and Mr. T are among 28 upcoming DLC wrestlers. Here you can see Mick Foley, and I guess this is Logan Paul, and this is Mr. T, and I recognize this character, I couldn't name him. And is this Stephanie McMahon? I don't know. Or if that's somebody else. There seems to be a decent Yokozuna is probably who that guy is, yeah. Or maybe Rikishi even. Mick Foley's character, Cactus Jack. Yeah. It seems to me like there's a decent chance of some renewed enthusiasm for WWE 2K22. That being said, I have also heard criticism that you press like one button and then it just goes into a fairly long animation sequence because they've just overly animated the game and removed a bunch of interactivity in favor of not showing it crashing. Let's see. Activate this effect. And I think we're fine here. I think we won here. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if WWE 2K22 is a resetting point, not quite exactly what everybody would want. So I got 100 gems for leveling up. Not 100% perfect, not anywhere as good as it should be for as old as the series is. 15 gems, wow. But at least a step in the right direction. Gran Turismo 7's first post-release update has arrived. The patch fixes progression bugs, includes a race display and music updates. The former Ghostwire Tokyo creative director has revealed her new studio Unseen. Ikumi Nakamura left Tango Gameworks because her work environment was making her ill. Which, what does that really mean? So here you have a picture of her with the safe head character from The Evil Within 1 and 2. She worked on Bayonetta and the canceled Scalebound games at Platinum Games. Then she spent almost a decade at Tango Gameworks, which, wow, Scalebound was canceled a long time ago. Which was founded by the Resident Evil creator Shinji Mikami. If anything, I think Tango Gameworks has kind of failed to live up to the hopes that one would have had for it. The Resident Evil 1 creator probably hasn't had that much influence over the long-running success of Resident Evil. Evil Within, I think, kind of shows that. But also, I just don't think he knew how to run a company. But you can almost certainly say the same is probably true for Nakamura. See, she later revealed the pressure of her working life there was negatively impacting her health. As an artist, game developer, and mother, I feel like I'm on a continuous quest to find my place. Alright, no. Like, we can click on this article, and that's probably the most important part of this article. But see, she now owns a company, so how in the world do you own a company and it not end up causing you more stress and have to focus on it even more? If the claim is that the previous work environment is a toxic work environment, which it very possibly was, she's going to have to really work hard to not make that exact same or make a worse toxic environment for herself as boss. So I'd almost expect Unseen as a company, just on the premise of which it's founded, I would almost expect it to be a very slow growing, kind of laid back company that doesn't succeed very fast, and may not succeed at all. And again, sexism still does definitely exist in the business world in Japan, so I wouldn't be surprised if the companies that Unseen and Nakamura would have to do business with as far as licensed products, because they can try to be an indie developer all they want, but eventually they're going to need to have get some contracts and do some side work. And if nobody wants to do business with her or take her seriously, that's going to make her business struggle. If nobody wants to work for her, that's going to be a problem. And at a certain level, that is the case. Is that both Tango Gameworks and Unseen are almost like vanity careers and vanity jobs for the founders, with few people beneath them, and probably even fewer that believe in the vision of their creators and are just taking a paycheck. Small business in video games is an interesting idea, and it probably should be the way to go, but we certainly see with all the acquisitions and such that that's not how it's going. Like, it's unfair to even suggest this, but there is a possibility Nakamura was the reason Scalebound was canceled. It's very believable that you could dismiss her contributions and attribute negative things to her that she didn't do, as much as you might go in the opposite way and say she's the only reason Okami and Bayonetta was good, and she's the only reason Scalebound looked good. And I would argue there's a bigger chance that is true, that she is actually a very good creator and worker, because Tango Gameworks with the Evil Within really did drop the ball after Evil Within 1 and made a pretty poor Evil Within 2. Here's the other article. She has opened her own studio and plans a game full of dark jokes. She also reveals that she left Tango Gameworks because the work was making her ill. It might be a case that she is actually more of a goth character. I mean, when you look at the pictures, this picture, and you think about the Evil Within, she might be saying it was making her sick, in the same way that a goth would say, this cutesy stuff is making me sick. Although I think that would be a pretty poor translation if that was the thing she was saying. Like, yeah, the film apparently was following her around, watching haunted ruins, photographing abandoned construction sites, which honestly, doing that very well may have been physically making her ill, just like dust and asbestos going to the many abandoned ruins in Japan once you get out of Tokyo. Yeah, I really like urban legends and everything that touches the occult, fringe science as well, using science to solve ghost mysteries. So, yeah. This is where real journalism needs to happen in video games. Like, a real journalist should have said, oh, it's making you ill? In what way? Was it like a lung thing or a mental thing? Because it's so easy to go down one path or the other and just make assumptions. Let's see. She did the Bethesda's E3 press conference and then left 3 months after the press conference. There was a lot of people who got interested in her and maybe put too much attention on her, and that pushed her to want to leave Tango Gameworks at that point. Arriving to that pool was like a long dive underwater. I had been ill for some time. Yeah. Yeah, Nakamura recalls how seniors at Capcom would sleep under the desks to make games. They were passionate to that point, and while that wasn't the case at Tango, the pressure of her working life there was negatively impacting her health. So she is explaining it better, finally, in the middle of this article. And really this is an argument for reading the whole article, which most people don't do, and I don't even really do. But it is also an argument for... I shouldn't have summoned this here. But it does lean toward the idea that if pressure was making her ill, then her new studio is almost certainly going to be running away from the idea of any pressure, which means they probably will be the company that is constantly in development hell as far as taking too long to release a game. She also says in this old article that she would like to do a Deadpool game, which it's not, I think, super highly likely that a brand new company would be able to do that. A weird looking game called In Sound Mind is next week's Epic Games Store free title. I've never even heard of this game. So last year the Epic Games Store gave away 89 free titles, down from 102 in 2020 combined, for a worth of $2,120. So I mean, you really are getting decent value for kind of random games, but I would still say definitely a decent value. Alright, special summon this, discard this, put this face up. Activate this. Activate this. See if the guy concedes. Doesn't sound like he's going to. Video Games Chronicle says the Dead Space remake is no longer targeting a 2022 release. Journalist claims this is not a reflection of the game being in trouble. It's now targeted to release in early 2023. Which is funny because I thought I saw an article that said they put out the time. The live stream happened earlier today, and I bet this is an older article. GameStop will hold its first PS5 in-store sale event for 43 days this Friday. Wouldn't that be its first in-store sale event in 43 days, not for 33 days. Almost 1,000 stores are reportedly participating. So I guess go to GameStop. I've lost here. Let's see. Overwatch 2 the Overwatch 2 director has announced a closed alpha, apologizes for not communicating well. There's a quote, "Honestly, we've let you down when it comes to developing Overwatch content," says Aaron Keller. There is definitely an argument that Overwatch 2 is really just a patch of Overwatch 1. I don't think Overwatch 2 is going to introduce a whole new set of heroes and a whole new set of gameplay modes and characters. And generally, I think Overwatch is dead as a concept. There's its fan base in the same way that there's still people playing Counter-Strike Go, but I don't think you're getting new people's attention to Overwatch, and I don't think Overwatch 2 will get new people's attention. Here's that article I was talking about. Super Nintendo World will open at Universal Studios Hollywood. So that's California. It almost certainly will be bigger than the Japanese one because there's just going to be more room in Hollywood, California that can be bought. And almost certainly Universal Studios Hollywood is already got a fairly large backlot, and they're going to just destroy and take down certain areas and shift whatever's there now to something more Nintendo-y. There is definitely this problem, and I certainly felt this while I was looking for video games to buy for the Switch to actually play, is Nintendo really has not put out a lot of great games recently. So when you have a Super Nintendo World, I mean, you're talking Mario and Donkey Kong is all they've done in Japan, and the offshoot characters from and offshoot games of Mario and Donkey Kong. It's very questionable whether we would ever see a third tier game, like a Zelda World. There's a decent chance. A Metroid World, almost certainly not. Nintendo never cared about Metroid, but maybe Universal Studios will convince them to do it in America and have a Metroid Prime sci-fi themed world, which would contrast kind of nicely from Mario, because Mario is cutesy fantasy where Zelda is more realistic fantasy, but it's still fantasy. Donkey Kong is cutesy fantasy too. But I doubt you're going to have like Punch-Out rides or games based off of single hit successes from NES and Super NES era. So I think it kind of runs out of steam, and like with the Sonic movies and all, you probably would want to make a Sonic World before you would want to make a Zelda World. Because that is really where it would boil down to, and that's what it happens at like Disneyland and Disney World, is that sure, you would maybe want to see Cinderella's castle, but you don't want an entire park dedicated to Cinderella. Sure, you would want to go on the Mickey Mouse and the Goofy rides and all of that, but each of those are their independent licensed Disney things, and if you get tired of all the kid-friendly Disney stuff, you go over to the Harry Potter world or the Star Wars world, or you go over to Epcot, which that's probably the worst option for young kids. So I just don't know if Nintendo has enough characters that they're willing to roll the dice on to try and have a Nintendo World where you move from one area to another area. And I could see just physically, when you look at the Japanese Mario World, it's blocky. It would be fairly easy to reskin all of this as Minecraft. It would be fairly easy to remove the Nintendo stuff and have the same rides and just reskin it on some Universal property, Universal Studios property cartoon, if they made a Universal Studios property cartoon. But it certainly right now is the smart move for Universal Studios to do this, because they really don't have great licenses or rides at the moment. They definitely have aging rides and licenses, as it were. King Kong and things like that are very, very old, and most kids these days wouldn't know what King Kong is, so going on the King Kong ride is kind of silly. all of these amusement parks are also ridiculously expensive, and that also has to be a consideration. Is that there really is a scenario where most parents shouldn't be spending their money taking their kids even for a once-in-a-lifetime vacation. All vacations are really, really expensive, and you are just throwing money at the wall to have a really nice experience. And in a lot of cases, the travel and the unfamiliarity of the new setting creates kind of a terrible experience for kids and young kids to go to these amusement things. And the hype and the stress and the expectation of it being great often ruins trips. And so it often is better to just say, hey, we're not going to Disneyland, but every year I'll take you to a local water park that is somewhat close to us, that's way cheaper, or we'll just go to multiple events throughout the year that are cheaper, and there's less pressure and less investment in that. Moving on, Cassetify has announced a Pokemon collaboration, including phone cases and Apple Watch bands. I've never heard of Cassetify, but yeah, looks like it's little pixely Pokemon things. Whatever. I mean, I guess that doesn't probably affect me much. Yeah, I was thinking about getting a new phone, but I wasn't really happy with the new Samsung Galaxy phone, but apparently they're coming out with an F23 model or something that actually sounds like it's pretty good, and even has like a headphone jack as well on top of an expandable micro SD card. So maybe what they've done is they're going to have an F series for fans of headphone jacks and expandable memory, and not a Samsung Galaxy F23. They may be separating the Galaxy name out of it. Which, that's fine. I'd have a real hard time justifying getting any other phone though besides a Samsung. It's just so easy to transfer from one Samsung phone to the other, and the Samsung Dex is a nice feature to think about owning. Moving on, Warzone is officially coming to mobile as Activision begins hiring in the middle of the acquisition, but work must continue, I suppose. Ubisoft has reported that the cybersecurity incident has happened, but says there's no evidence player details were compromised. The company is investigating the incident with external experts. Of course, this is just like the default response you would always get, though, is that there is no evidence that player details were compromised, and then a week later they'll put out another article, another announcement saying, oh, actually, some people's data was compromised, and then they'll come out and go, oh, maybe everybody's details was compromised. According to Video Games Chronicle, a new iOS app lets players track quests and NPCs in Elden Ring. I haven't heard too many people talk about Elden Ring in the past couple days, but it still sounds like it's very popular. Apparently, Xbox and Twitch will host an indie game showcase next week, which is weird that Twitch would be included in that, but I guess Microsoft probably doesn't care if they do business with this. Pinball FX fans for the Pinball FX3 have reacted badly to the price of the new Indiana Jones table DLC. This is a recreation of the 1993 classic table. It's the game's 100th tables, but players are calling it 100%, calling it too expensive. I thought actually that this table was not a recreation of the Indiana Jones table. I thought this was a whole new table. There must just be 2 Indiana Jones pinball tables. And yeah, you can see how the whole thing just like changed with their 3D models and the animation here that wouldn't have been there normally. Yeah, there's definitely an Indiana Jones table that looks different than that. Let's see. Most previous Pinball FX3 tables have come in packs of 2 or more tables. Williams packs, which contain recreations of other classic Williams tables, generally cost $9.99 for 3 tables. But this single table is being sold for $14.99. Yep, that seems expensive, and it's kind of a bad time at the moment to buy any Pinball FX3 tables anyways, because remember, they're remaking Pinball FX and relaunching it, so they're going from Pinball FX3 to back to just Pinball FX and making a new one. And so there's a real good argument to hold off until that happens. What am I doing? I have no idea what I'm doing here, but I think I can fix this. Summon this by sacrificing this. Put that face up. The Ascending Soul did not let me take that card into my hand. See if that destroys everything else. And I just not played these 2 cards. Zen Studios with the Pinball FX series has always been fairly greedy and fairly bad in the product, in my opinion, that they make, because they try to make these animated tables instead of just being accurate recreations. And honestly, it is probably better just to use Visual Pinball Studio and emulate / steal pinball tables to get realistic depictions of what you're looking for and what you want. And it's a shame the Pinball Arcade just did not keep itself going as far as quality, because there's definitely a case where had Pinball Arcade continued to... I don't want to do that. Can't cancel it, can I? Alright, well, we'll see what happens here. There's definitely a scenario though where had Pinball Arcade maintained its quality, it would have succeeded a lot better and been a better experience. It still feels also fairly difficult to justify playing pinball in a digital form at all, because there's just no real comparison to actually owning a pinball table and playing that, and it's just far too expensive to own a pinball table to actually go down that route for most people. I can't 100% also say that for certain Lucasfilm / Disney are blameless in this pricing too. I wouldn't be surprised if is Disney or Steven Spielberg who demanded the higher price. Moving on. The Dr. Disrespect and Twitch have resolved their legal dispute. The streamer said he was suing the platform last year. There's really no indication as to what happened there. No party admits to any wrongdoing. Almost certainly, at a certain level, it probably was Twitch's wrongdoing, because Twitch is run by a bunch of idiots, it seems like. But there is... it had always felt like that the accusation was that Dr. Disrespect in a live stream had him and his cameraman walk into a bathroom in a convention, and there was like young people, maybe even kids under 18 in the bathroom, and they definitely did not like that, and that makes some sense. That has always been my assumption as to why it was kicked off, but it was in the middle of a lot of mostly male, I think, streamers being kicked off for being creeps, and so then there was that air, did Dr. Disrespect do something creepy, or was it because he was negotiating with the Microsoft briefly owned streaming service that got shut down, and he was trying to negotiate for a new, better deal? But yeah, so it seems like there will probably be never any real resolution there. And on one hand, you can say he was willing to go to court, so those court details would almost certainly have come out. If he had done anything even close to being damaging to his brand, he would have not wanted it to go to court. On the other hand, you could say the exact same thing for Twitch. Had something they'd done been illegal or unprofessional, and that came out in court, that could have been damaging to them. And I think that's probably why they decided to drop the court cases, because both sides were in danger of damaging their brands more than helping their brands. There is arguably a problem with Dr. Disrespect on YouTube even now, in that YouTube just does not let people, even big, well-known streamers, grow, and that really sucks. I certainly feel that as a small streamer. I'm somewhere around 450 subscribers. It seems unbelievable that unless I got a couple videos that really hit this year, it seems unbelievable I'm gonna make it to 1,000 by the end of this year. Let alone the numbers that Dr. Disrespect should probably be getting, of 3,000-4,000 every month, increasing. The only person who has actually successfully had major growth is PewDiePie, and PewDiePie, basically, subscribe to PewDiePie had to become a meme and a fight against 2 different other channels or to get to those high subscribe levels. Moving on, Video Games Chronicles says a major Dying Light update is now available for consoles as well as PC. Check that out if you're interested. Russia has reportedly legalized some piracy in response to sanctions and boycotts. Russians will be allowed to use IP from unfriendly countries without paying for it. I didn't hear that this had actually been approved or made into law, but I don't particularly understand Russian law or how quickly some legislator or Putin himself could just make something into law. Like actual law following an actual constitution may just not really exist in Russia at all. It may just be somebody says something, and when something is said, it is done. So yeah, it has never really felt like the rule of law was particularly respected, or any real solid set in stone, fair, and easy to understand and interpret law has ever really existed in Russia. Like we saw that even when that politician was sent to jail because of like a fire in his house or something, and leaving his house arrest because of that. Well, I've lost, I think. Moving on. It also doesn't really matter, I think it's important to say whether it's legal or not to pirate in Russia. Piracy in Russia has been the de facto only way you could even get software for most Russians, and has been that way for decades. So, like, it's really not that big of a story as it might seem. Elden Ring is already the best-selling game in 2022 in the US, and it's the 5th best title in the 12-month period ending in February. Xbox Series X and S consoles can now download updates in energy saving mode. It consumes about 20 times less power than standby mode. One would suspect that means that there we were, demoted. No warning of being demoted again. One would suspect that energy saving mode either doesn't affect the download speeds at all, or it doesn't really matter. The problem, though, is that updates and bandwidth are not optimized, in my opinion. Not that the computers are using too much energy to download the updates. Optimize your updates better and create fewer updates and smaller updates would be the better solution. I think I may want to just stop playing fairly quickly, because like playing ranked now won't get me any daily quests. Playing solo would potentially get those daily quests done, but that's about it. Okay. Here's the Gematsu articles. MediaVision has 5 new titles in development. This article's been updated. So, you can see a picture of a girl and some screenshots now. On top of that, I don't know if that article actually updated any information. Chrono Trigger for PC and smartphone updates adds full screen support, auto battle, or boost mode, and more on March 11th. We think already talked about that. Ship of Fools we talked about. We talked about that one. We talked about that one. Did we talk about Snufkin? Yeah, I think we did. I changed something on the Gamatsu one that didn't need to be changed, I think, and on my programming. And that's why it's opening so many old articles, specifically on Gamatsu, when it was Video Games Chronicles that was being the problem. I overreacted, I think, is what happened. And that may just be a growing problem with me. Certainly is that I'm overreacting to problems and moving too fast and need to take things slow and cautiously and really think things through. Yeah, because all of these articles were old. New Game Expo set for March 31st. Bespoken, having a spells and combat gameplay. Capcom announcing a dinosaur-themed game called Exo Primal. Ghost Warrior Tokyo's pre-launch trailer. Stranger in Paradise. Yeah, these are all old articles. Yep. And I just don't have time to go through old articles. Yep. I'd like to be able to go through old articles, but let's go ahead and set this. Let's go ahead and play this. See what happens. Dueled, Toon Mask Sorcerer. You know, as stupid as this is, I think you just do want to do this. Okay. Play this. Summon this. Put it in attack position. Okay. We'll see how this goes. Seems unlikely to be able to play yet another card, but maybe. 25 cards to 31 cards. So he's got to keep this alive for some reason. He might be trying to draw something very specific. Moving on, Taiko Rishiden 5 DX has a debut trailer. Sounds like it's probably a shoot 'em up game, but no, I guess it's a strategy RPG game looking at the tags. This definitely looks like a kind of rough game that would not come to the West. Eve Ghost Enemies has been delayed to June 30th in Japan. This looks like a visual novel of some sort. Gunvolt Chronicles Luminous Avenger 9 2 DLC character has the boss Corona from Galgun Double Peace, which is an interesting crossover, certainly. But her character in Galgun Double Peace would look like this, whereas in the game that it's crossing over to, she's going to look like this. So it's barely going to, or she's going to look like this, and then she's going to split into these smaller ones. And it seems like they might split into even smaller ones. It's an interesting DLC crossover. You really wouldn't expect Galgun Double Peace or the Galgun series to have crossovers or to have any more of a push towards doing something. Okay. Let's go ahead and do this. Might as well just add this and then play this. If this doesn't work, I basically have nothing I can do. Unless I could chain this and... Nope. I've lost. Let's go through some of the games. Take a break from Komatsu. This looks like an RPG game, so we can say no to that. Vamps for the Memories looks like a RPG game that almost makes me want to say yes to it, but not really. It's free anyway, so check it out if you're interested. Astral Slider here looks like an infinite runner, so we can say no to that. It's a free Oculus Rift game. Interesting. Painter's Pets. Looks like nothing of interest. Cosmo Bit. Looks like not anything that I would want to play. We did talk about the Glover game being announced by Pico. There's been kind of a pushback against Pico in particular because they haven't really done a good job of emulating these old games that they're getting the license to. This is a Chinese only game, so we'll say no to that, obviously. Same is true for this one. It's like Chinese chess. Shame it doesn't support English or Japanese chess. Yeah, we may have more like Chinese games approved today. There was kind of a small number of Chinese games approved Wednesday, or coming out on Steam on Wednesday. This, though, it looks like it might very well just be a troll game, and I'd say no to it anyways. Forgotten what I was talking about. Well, we can see WWE 2K22 is very positive. I'm going to put that on the fall list, but I have a real hard time believing I'd actually buy it. Yeah, I've completely forgotten about what I was talking about. And honestly, I kind of like that I'm just sitting in silence here instead of having the background music. Like, I've always wanted the background music for when I go quiet, but I'm not going quiet that often. If anything, I'm just restarting sentences and going and ah. This is just a strategy game, so we'll say no to that. So maybe I should do some experiments with Straw Hat. This looks like this might be interesting. With just being in silence and talking, and just letting silence happen when it happens. Um, Anyways, I remember what I was talking about. I was talking about Pico Interactive. They're basically getting the rights to these old games and they're running emulators. They're not even setting the emulators particularly well, and they're charging too much in people's opinions. And so there is really kind of a pushback to it. And at a certain level, yeah, I definitely see that. There is you're paying quite the premium to just feel good in your own spirit that you own this game, so then you can go download a ROM, because you probably aren't even getting the ROMs when you buy the Pico version of the game. Um, so like you buy this game on Steam just to feel good in your heart that you're not really pirating when you go pirate a ROM somewhere else, and um, and run it on a better emulator. Unlike this is not too different from some of the Scum VM games, which actually do give you the game files most of the time. Like if you buy, say, Indiana Jones Fate of Atlantis on Steam, you then have a place where you theoretically own and can always re-download the Fate of Atlantis files instead of having to go and find them somewhere else to download. Uh, and then you can just use those files with the latest version of ScumVM instead of the version that ships on um, Steam, which almost all the Scum games are through the ScumVM emulator. Um, but at a certain point, there is an argument that things like Glover have just not been. I'm going to put this on the fall list. Uh, they have not been on sale long enough, and in what is a reasonable person's opinion, something that hasn't been sold or marketed or had any value and has just been sitting on the shelf unpurchasable for 10, 15 years, like Glover, should have just been made public domain, or considered abandonware, whatever your time limit on considering something abandonware is. And once something's abandonware, it should just always be considered abandonware. And then in your own heart, you probably should just say, you know what, I could go get the ROM of Glover. Glover's going to be a weird one too, because this really is more of a pushback on Pico just doing it over and over again. And in the past, Pico's been, I think, one of the publishers that have gotten some pretty bad games and then tried to sell them at a pretty high markup. Uh, Glover is not this beloved, nostalgic game. It is perhaps for me who actually played it, but the vast majority of people didn't play it. And we are running out of old games in which people have real nostalgia for. This isn't. This World of Robots doesn't look awful, but it's an MMO, so I'd say no to it. Um, Aria, it's a narrative-driven exploration game, so there might be something there. It's also free. English allegedly full audio. So yeah, there's definitely a point. Like, just take it to the next generation. Are we going to potentially have games sold yet again? You see it with like Nintendo too. Does Nintendo really deserve an exclusive monopoly on selling Super Mario Brothers when Super Mario Brothers was not available for sale? If the NES version of Super Mario Brothers was not available for sale since probably 1986, 87. Um, there have been new versions of Super Mario Brothers, derivative works, but then those even have been fairly few and far between. How much does it hurt society at this point to stop Nintendo from making a few more dollars off of the second, third, or fourth generation of people that would have come around to the original Super Mario Brothers version ROM? Like it almost certainly, if you were to weigh it out, hurts society a lot more by it not being public domain. Um, Sherlock Holmes, supposedly in public domain. Winnie the Pooh, supposedly in public domain at this point. So, are we going to see a whole bunch of Sherlock Holmes and Winnie the Pooh content in the next couple of years? Probably not a lot, but we may see one or two things done. We've already seen a few Sherlock Holmes stories, movies made in the past few years since the beginnings of the book started to go into public domain. But that didn't really hurt the estate of Sherlock Holmes and Arthur Conan Doyle in any real way. Arguably, everything should be public domain as soon as the author is dead, anyways. If we're going to accept the general concept that if your father was a criminal, the children shouldn't be allowed to be thrown in jail because of the sins of the father, then you should also go in the opposite direction, that if your father was a creative person who contributed to society, like Arthur Conan Doyle did with Sherlock Holmes, then the children shouldn't be allowed to greatly profit from that either. There's a difference between, say, a father working to feed his family and profiting while he's alive, and then his family generations later still profiting off of an ancestor. Because at a certain point, that just becomes royalty. And, like, the queen giving the prince titles and land and authority. Yeah. This game brightness, I've been just sitting here as I'm talking. I think this is probably too much of an infinite runner. Yeah. Too much of just like an infinite runner platformer. You know what, though? In an abundance of caution, I'll put it on the follow list. Hotel Transylvania, we can immediately put on the follow list just to see if people like it. Although I do think that the Hotel Transylvania games up until this point have been kind of relatively bad, overpriced. The Hotel Transylvania series, I think, has been more successful than you would have expected it would have been. So this is from the Ryan's Rescue Squad and Fast and Furious creators and PJ Masks and Peppa Pig. Peppa Pig rated very positively. Addams Family Values. A lot of these games just don't have any reviews. But then the Paw Patrol game was awful. 11 positive reviews for DreamWorks Spirit. 37 reviews for Transformers Battlegrounds. And I guess that's the problem, is that this is probably the go-to name as far as kids games, young kids games. And there aren't that many young kids games out there. So you might not have a choice. But yeah, you can definitely see kids are not used to using the Steam system of reviewing games. And their parents aren't used to using the system of reviewing games. And then, let's see, next we have a game on Steam here called Eero Manager, which is like a devil, big butt, big breast character for 2 screenshots, and then you realize it's just a Flappy Bird clone. Just garbage game with an adult patch. So no to that, but I guess that might be a bit of an indication that this is going to be the Friday where we might start to see some more adult content. We might even be slowly starting to see a case where adult content might come out every week. That would definitely be a step in the right direction. It still wouldn't really be right if adult content was always if it was always held off until Friday evenings when nobody would see it. But there is even a slight argument now that even AAA games are starting to actually release on Fridays. I imagine it's probably closer to late night Thursdays, and then they are pre-ordering and giving early access to people on Tuesdays for games, or even Mondays for games. I haven't seen that become the case on Steam though. Like, still the vast majority of AAA games feel like they come out on Monday or Tuesday in the middle of the week, not after 5 o'clock on Fridays. This is an interesting looking game because it's got these little, I want to say wushu Japanese dolls in this animation in the trailer, but the actual game just kind of looks like it's a port of an old Diablo clone. And it doesn't support English, it's Chinese only anyways. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of Chinese games today. This is looks like a Chinese port of Detention, but seems like it might be even maybe a rip-off of Detention. Like, since I can't read any of it because it's in it's all in Chinese. It says it's called Developer Comp. It does just feel like it might be in the same art style as Detention, really. Jeez, I don't have a single card I can play. I guess I also will have to get better about not just assuming things that look kind of like the horror game of Detention are rip-offs of Detention, because that's kind of unfair. That even if they did establish a new art style, like using the similar art style doesn't mean it's a complete rip-off. I need more information. I need to be able to read it. Panicle Back to the Wild. Looks like maybe it's a card-based positional placement game. Looks like it's probably Chinese only. Now it says it supports English, but I don't think that inspires enough confidence for me. Fantasylandia World here looks like just a low polygon game. Let's just go ahead and end our turn and let them win. So yeah, no to Fantasylandia. Here we have one called Charlie in the Moist Verse of Madness, which looks like it's probably a troll joke game. Yeah. It looks too much like an acid flip troll joke game. It's free anyway, so check it out if you're interested. I have no idea who Charlie is supposed to be either. Here we have a game called Tied Up, which looks like it's an RPG Maker horror game, although it's zoomed in a little bit more, and I think for a horror game that probably would help. There's been a couple of these that have succeeded fairly well, enough to to give it a chance and put it on the fall list, but it still definitely has an upward hill to climb as far as just being an RPG Maker game in general. Here we have a game on Steam called Forerunner Night, which is just an infinite runner. I can definitely hear my PC with all the fans spinning a lot better. It's a lot louder. But I don't think that's something the microphone is picking up, and once I put the case on, that wouldn't be a thing, and am going to try and turn it back into just more of an automatic mode where it only spins up when it needs to instead of preemptively trying to cool things down more than they need to. This Ink and Think, it doesn't look terrible, but I don't know if it's a local co-op game, and I don't know if there's that much of a gameplay mechanic here. It really is just platforming and jumping on switches, and they happen to leave an ink trail for no good reason. So know that. Conflict 3048 looks like it's a real-time strategy game. It's probably not going to get reviewed that well, but I'll give it a chance. There. Crash Test Idiot. Obviously we can say no to that. Today was the day that they were going to let adult games in. It feels like the trade-off may be that they're just allowing less adult games in, because over the past 2 or 3 weeks it feels like there has been only 4 or 5 adult games, anime adult games, or even Western adult games. Map of Materials here looks like it's just a survival game, so I would say no to that. ST Hell looks like a first-person shooter with a lot of iron sight screenshots. This is probably nothing. I'm gonna put it on the fall list. It's probably just an arena shooter. As I watch this, yeah. It's a big circle where robots are going to spawn and you're going to shoot them. I kind of like the robot art style. Arguably, there's maybe too much fog and darkness, but that can definitely be an aesthetic. That's one of the things about Lego Worlds, though, that really sucks, is it has a day-night cycle, and if it is nighttime, it's way too dark in the middle of the night, and it stays night way too long. So you would almost certainly always want. I'm going to take this off the fall list just because it looks like an arena game. You'd almost certainly want a bright ceiling overhead lighting up the Lego pieces in Lego Worlds. There's very little reason why you would want a nighttime, and even if you did want a nighttime, still probably would need to be a lot brighter than what it was depicting. Here we have one called 2022 Word, which just looks like an Arkanoid clone, so no to that. Lauren's Lure Prologue, I think we can say no to just because it's a prologue, and it's an oddly kind of low polygon platforming parkouring game. Yep, free, English only. VR Museum. Looks like it's a VR museum of several like weird surreal things, and I like weird surreal things. And if anything, this might be first time somebody's tried to make a VR museum, and it actually feels like they've gone in a decent amount of effort. So many other times it's just like they've put 10 or 20 things on display, and it's also free. and runs in standard modes. Interesting. So at a certain point, if it runs in standard modes, I'll just put that on the wish list and probably would never bother to actually check it out. But if I did check it out or did get VR, I would check it out. We have something called Mandela, which is apparently a bullet hell shoot 'em up. Although I would be very distracted just looking at the mandala. I think it's mandala. That's how you pronounce it. Patterns. These are the things they draw on the backs of hands of Indian women in henna for weddings and things like that, I think. Maybe they just do it to be decorative in several occasions. We have a game called Wing Breakers. That might work as a game. 1874 single player does exist. Actually seems to have a stats. I've never seen stats be something that you would highlight as a feature. And it really goes to show how these feature boxes could just get way too long. Let's get the background music going again. Yeah, but yeah, windbreakers wing breakers might be something. Yeah, we have one called Nia Idam, which looks like nothing of interest. So we'll say no to that. Here we have Paranormal Motel, which I suspect this is just a walking simulator, maybe horror game. Yeah. I don't think that there's enough here to justify playing that. Here we have a game called Sharp Wands, which looks like a Joust clone. Let's see. No to that. Here we have Spirit of Shogun, or Spirit of Shotgun. Looks like it is a platforming game. Maybe you use a shotgun to propel yourself up and down. Yeah, you do. So it's basically a Jump King clone, except for you use a shotgun instead of just jumping. Next, we have a game called Brothers, which is some kind of puzzle game, but it's too zoomed out and too poorly animated, I think, for my interest. Yeah, I think that's a bad decision as far as the art aesthetic for that type of game. Here we have Kalizmar, which is a pixely hack and slash dungeon crawler. I don't even know if it really is hack and slash or if you just walk up to something and then it automatically hacks. Now, I guess you do have to push a button to hack and slash yourself. It's too pixely, it's too zoomed out, which is a shame because if this was better animated, I would consider it. It's early access, $2.39, a little too cheap. It's not really a game that I think needs to be in early access, and when I see an early access game, I am not expecting it to redo its graphics and make everything look better. That's only happened in a couple of cases. It also seems very tower defense in that it seems like the enemies barely attack you. Next we have Valley of the Dead Malnazidos. Kind of like this art style. It almost feels like a Telltale game. But I don't know if you're fighting zombies or undead. I'm gonna give it a follow. It's maybe too long of a name. Also, next we have a game called Golden Light, which looks like it's probably asset flip nonsense. Very weird looking. Survival horror, first person shooter, prop hunt, roguelite about meat. It is rated overwhelmingly positive. Is this some weird meme game? I'm going to put this on the fall list because it's overwhelmingly positive and I want to give Mob Rule a chance, but I really have to question if this isn't just some streamer that plays this game and is memeing around it, or that they're just buying reviews somehow. Nobody, as far as I know, has ever been caught and publicly announced as buying reviews and cheating the Steam review system, which almost certainly means somebody is doing it and getting away with it. One gun guy here does not look like enough of a game to interest me. So it probably wouldn't hurt for somebody to be publicly shamed for doing that. By the way, I found out that Team Executor person that Nintendo was seeking jail time for, I believe, and has gotten a judgment for millions of dollars against the member of Team Executor that was Team Executor was the team that originally made the hack for the Nintendo Switch. So it puts a little bit more context on why they are so doggedly pursuing a modder when the modder is literally selling mods for their current console. But I guess most console modders would be doing that anyways. This game Psycho is just a Wolfenstein 3D clone or Doom clone. But yeah, I don't know if that many people ever really were modding like the original Xbox or the original PlayStations to play modded games in the initial 4 years and launch of those consoles, whereas the Switch kind of did have the hack mods, the ability to hack it very early in its launch in that first generation. And arguably, if Nintendo had just spent all the money they spent on that lawsuit working on bringing out a Switch 2, they probably would have done better with their money instead of getting a judgment for an amount of money that they will never see a dime for. I don't think that's really going to stop too many other companies from making hacks and mods for the Switch. If they can make them, they'll just do it better than Team Executor was doing. Here, this game, Deadly Flare, open world survival zombie game. It's probably nothing, but it actually looks good enough that I might give it a follow. Here we have a game called A Taste of the Past, which looks like it's mostly a visual novel. Maybe a cooking game. Looks like it might be Chinese. Well, what's funny is English and allegedly English full audio, but it's a story about emotional side scroller about reconnecting to your Chinese culture, with your Chinese culture navigating a train to the afterlife, featuring a wholesome story, cooking minigame, and more. I'll put it on the follow list. We'll see if people like that. But oddly, doesn't support Chinese. And that's what you would expect. And it's certainly a huge assumption there that everyone has a Chinese culture. there is a dangerous propaganda that could be seeded that that China, imperialistic China, might try to push the propaganda that all people everywhere on the planet are actually Chinese, and that all human life started in China, and thus China deserves to unify the planet. I mean, it would probably take decades upon decades for China to get to that point, but in every single direction of their borders, they are pushing to expand their empire, with perhaps the exception of Russia, and maybe we very quickly will see even Russia's border and Mongolia's border being encroached. And then we've got a game here called Halftime Heroes, which looks like nothing. So let's go back to our Gamatsu articles. eBaseball Powerful Pro has now a 9-minute trailer. If that interests you, check it out. Ruby for Switch launches April 28th, which, yeah, I'm not really planning on getting into the Nintendo eShop and getting digital games, so that's going to severely limit the number of games that I would play on the Switch, and that's kind of important because I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time playing the Switch. In fact, I'm really wasting what would be a fairly significant amount of money and time to play maybe 10 games. The software sales have been updated from Famitsu. You can see Triangle Strategy for the Switch is number 1. Gran Turismo between the PS4 and PS5 would be number 1 if combined. Elden Ring is number 4 for the PS4, and then Pokemon Legends Arceus is number 5. Of course, the total number of sales for Pokemon Legends is way higher, and that would be the number to really see when you see like Mario Kart 8 still selling very well and Smash Brothers Ultimate selling very well. I didn't even consider Smash Brothers Ultimate as a game to get, and Minecraft having the high numbers. Animal Crossing, I don't think I would want to play Animal Crossing. Ring Fit Adventure still selling very well. The Konami Momotori game still selling very well. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, like everything seems to be selling 2 or 3 million copies. Now remember, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel in less than 4 months has downloaded 20 million times. So there is a factor of 10 difference between selling something for $60 and giving something away for free. That being said, I doubt even 1% of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel has spent $60 in real world cash for the microtransactions. So I imagine you're making a lot more selling 2 million at $60, $70 than you are trying to get microtransactions on something that's free to play. That being said, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel has the possibility of lasting a fairly long amount of time, whereas a lot of these Nintendo games are going to eventually stop getting more sales. Let's see. Komatsu says Gamescom 2022 is set for August 24th to 28th, on site in Cologne and online worldwide. So Cologne, Germany? Is that where Cologne is? I think Gamescom is a German European game event. Yeah, I'm a stupid American, so I don't know where Cologne is for certain, but I would say probably Germany. Merge Games is going to publish farming and life simulation games Sunnyside for the PS5, Xbox Series, and everything else. which these animation of these characters I don't think look particularly good. It's also kind of weird to have one character in like a school sailor outfit and then 2-3 characters outside of that outfit. It looks more 3D. I guess the question is, could you potentially have a Stardew Valley that was more 3D? I guess you could. I almost thought of comparing it to something like Persona, but I don't think you really would compare it to something like Persona, though. To make a Persona game where you were farming things would require there to be far too many farmers in one city. We had already talked about Ikumi Nakamura establishing Unseen. This time, though, and maybe this is in part a choice of Gamatsu, they have just shown the logo instead of showing the picture of her. So, take it one way or the other. Like, I guess I would probably lean more with Gamatsu saying, hey, this article is about the establishment of a new company that happens to be run by Ikumi Nakamura. So let's talk about the company and show a picture of the company. Whereas Video Games Chronicle, being a European company, goes, hey, let's put a pretty girl, pretty woman on our first screenshot. So let's put a picture of her instead of the company that's being established. Which is more accurately the subject? Is it newsworthy to talk about Ikumi Nakamura doing something, or is it newsworthy to talk about a company being established? I think it's more newsworthy to talk about a company being established, so I would have to lean with Gamatsu here, although it is somewhat of a tough call. You could potentially just jump to conclusions and that this was Gamatsu being sexist and not wanting to show her, but then that kind of falls apart when you have them show a trailer that shows her, and she certainly shows herself. The title of this video is We Are Unseen, so it's not just all about her. Here we have a IGN interview showing her off, also being linked to. But yeah, if it was Ikumi Nakamura blows her nose, for instance, and you were writing a story like that, then obviously it would be so mundane and boring. You wouldn't put a picture of someone blowing their nose. You'd put a picture of Ikumi Nakamura. Although, why would you be writing an article about such a mundane event in the first place? But yeah, when there are potentially two subjects and you have to pick a picture, you probably are going to have to make a personal editorial decision and hopefully make the right one as far as what's more valid. Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga has Building the Galaxy developer diary and screenshots. I definitely need to rage quit on the Lego Worlds game fairly quickly. Otherwise, there is a scenario where I will just be turned off of the idea of playing the other TT Lego games. I don't think so, though. The other Lego games are so good. Even when they're bad, they're nowhere as bad as Lego Worlds is. But yeah, I need to play a different game anyways to make sure it wasn't just Lego Worlds that was causing more problems. Anyways, I need to find something that's relatively known to not have major problems with graphics and yet pushes the video card fairly hard. So playing something like Resident Evil 4 at the moment would be a mistake. I need to play something that I've already played that was visually demanding. I also don't think Fallout 3 is probably the best bet, but it might be one to try. Moving on, we've probably already talked about this, but Chaos Head Noah and Chaos Child Double Pack is coming to the West on October 7th. It includes custom bonus DLC for Chaos Head Noah, which this anime girl is in a bra. This is a visual novel, I would assume. And it probably doesn't have anything too explicit in it outside of that DLC. Overwatch 2 PvP closed beta test is set for late April. We had already talked about that. The third Twitch Gaming Showcase ID at Xbox is set for March 16th. So apparently they've done this twice before. But usually when there's just a indie showcase of games, those games are very well forgotten before I would even think about playing them or covering them. Outward Definitive Edition is coming to the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC in May. What is Outward World? It's some kind of game, I would assume. It looks like it's a fantasy game. Run around, hack and slash things. Watching it through the blur is not helping anything. Wanted Dead SXSW 2022 trailer. Is that Dead South by Southwest? Isn't that a Austin music festival in Austin, Texas? I think that's probably what this is that this game is called Wanted Dead, and there was a South by Southwest festival. Maybe it's not all music anymore, and they put out a trailer. And I feel like this game feels like it would have been announced previously, and I just missed it. Looking at this through the blur, it looks like it might be a pretty cool running and hack and slash and gunning game. It doesn't feel too different from like an Oni Chamber game, if Oni Chamber games were good. Of course, that dynamite action that they're trying to show off could be turned into repetitive animations. This could be like a game like Bulletstorm, where unless it catches people's attention and they get a sequel fairly quickly, this character could be easily forgotten. This might be one of the first cases where we've seen somebody with like tattoo sleeves in a video game. That's a lot of texture that will push graphics a little bit harder. Although I bet in the actual game she's wearing sleeves, or it's rendered at a pretty low rate anyways. There definitely have been cases where there are interesting single story event games, and they come and they go, and then there's just nothing more done with them. So you get in this weird position where not only do you want a game that looks interesting to potentially succeed, but you want it to succeed and get a sequel, which potentially means trying to get a lot of people to buy it in its launch window and pre-ordering, which is not what consumers should do. Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duels did top 20 million. We had already talked to this. New story mode added to the solo mode. It launched on January 19th originally, and then got mobile things on January 27th. Fairly quickly, but honestly, it should have just been day one. And it still feels like Yu-Gi-Oh! Still has some things to adjust. There's also some Hearthstone content that they were promising to come out if anybody's still playing Hearthstone. But yeah, I think the rank system's still problematic. I think the amount of cards could be expanded a little bit quickly. The reward system is a little greedy. The shop system is a little expensive. Nothing game breaking or deal breaking as at the moment. You can definitely play Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel free to play. Having to log in every day and spectate, having to log in every day in general is kind of an annoyance, but that's about the biggest problem I'm having with Yu-Gi-Oh! At the moment. And at the very least, I don't have to go back and do any more Shadowverse stuff, so that's good too. Moving on, Konosuba Dungeon RPG sequel has been announced for PS4 and Switch. Konosuba as an anime, I don't know if they've got a new season announced yet or not, but they're still making spin-off games. Shadowverse, speaking of Shadowverse, did get greenlit for a second season of their cartoon anime for kids, which it is possible Shadowverse will just go for 4 or 5 years as an anime, and that'll keep their Shadowverse as a card game alive. Chex Quest HD is now available for the Switch. Is it free? Nope, it is $4.99, which is $4.99 too expensive for what would have been a advertisement for cereal. A game called Revita launches April 21st for the Switch and PC. Axiom Verge 2 is coming to the Steam on August 11th. The PC version is currently available on the Epic Games Store, so it was an Epic Games Store exclusive. And I didn't like Axiom Verge 1, so wouldn't go back to that. And then I guess the latest live stream did confirm that Dead Space Remake is launching in early 2023. I feel like they will push the Dead Space Remake back every time the other game that people should be paying attention to, which I've forgotten the name of completely, gets pushed back, or they get any indication that it's potentially not going to come out when they think it's going to come out. I still wouldn't be surprised if this Dead Space Remake is literally just a lie, and it is just to cannibalize the original creators of Dead Space, who went off and are making their own game. And even if a Dead Space Remake does come out and the other game does come out, you're still probably better off playing the other game, because that's going to be a new story in a new world, where a Dead Space Remake is going to have to take the somewhat familiar aspects of Dead Space and tell a much better story and get rid of a bunch of the ridiculous stuff. Like, at the end of the day, a Dead Space Remake does not work if it is just the religious cult of worshipping the necromorphs, and the necromorphs turning into a big mass of a moon that's sentient in some kind of weird moon communication network. So there needs to be kind of some interesting twists where there's like a mention of that. I keep wanting to call it Scientology, but they called it something else. Then there needs to be a mention of that religion in the first game, and then a very quick twist to say, nope, they're nothing. They barely exist in this world. Nobody believes in that nonsense. The necromorphs very possibly don't even need to be created or be coming from a marker. Like it would be more interesting if the necromorphs just happened, if it was some kind of computer virus or virus in the food or the soda cans or something that turned people into necromorphs, or just a disease in general. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com has an article here. Blizzard Entertainment is splitting up Overwatch 2's player versus events versus player modes. So there is also a potential here that one of those two modes might be free to play and the other might cost money. Although that would just be speculation on my part. They apparently have a design article here on GameDeveloper.com, how cats inspired Lady Dimitrescu's performance in Resident Evil Village. Which, yeah, anybody that has a cat seems to have that toxoplasmicity or whatever it is that gets in their brain and they become obsessed with cats. But whatever. It obviously was a good source of inspiration to make the movements of the character. And it's probably not an article worth mentioning, but I guess it's a happy-go-lucky article compared to so many downright depressing articles that come out from GameDeveloper.com or other news sources. They also have Activision working on a mobile version of Call of Duty Warzone. And then Omida analysis says Apple's advertising changes have, quote, altered the trajectory of the market. Apple search ads revenue grew by 264% in 2021 following changes to the IDFA and iOS 14. Independent developer something agreement, I imagine was what that stands for. So it seems like at some point Apple made it easier to advertise through apps and games, and probably means that Apple apps are going to have more advertisements in the games. Although it could be that they are just better ads, but it never seems like that's the case. Everybody claims that they're trying to do better ads that are more relevant to you, but in the end of the day, you just end up with more ads in front of your face and the same ads in front of your face more often. Moving on, here's a list of the GDC pitch finalists for GDC 2022. Remember, GameDeveloper.com is owned by the same parent company as GDC. And we can see some pictures here of games we don't recognize, because they would be pitches for games, not finished products, and very likely or never will be finished products. C. Niantic shutting down Pokemon Go operations in Russia and Belarus. Again, I have to point out, this is more than likely because they cannot get the money for the microtransactions than anything else. If anything, it would be smart to shut down Pokemon Go in Ukraine too. Nobody should be out there playing Pokemon Go in the middle of the country being invaded and there being bombs and I assume mines and just bullets flying overhead. Stay indoors by all means. Then GameDeveloper.com repeats Ubisoft's claim that cybersecurity player data was not compromised. So we already talked about that. And then EA, Gearbox, Microsoft, and 60 plus companies speak out against the Texas anti-LGBTQ plus policies, which there have been several, certainly. One of the most recent ones was just an executive order from the, I believe, governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, just telling Child Protective Services to investigate any kid who is transgender who's getting any kind of like help to transition as child abuse. But because they tried to pass a law there and he couldn't do it, so then he just made an executive order. I don't know why Greg Abbott right now is pushing in that direction. Like, because I don't know if that really is getting Republicans in Texas any extra votes. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know if Greg Abbott is really running even for re-election at the time, so I don't know if it's about saving his butt or saving his fellow Republicans' butt, or maybe he just actively believes in these actions. And it's pretty easy, I'll say, for EA and Microsoft and a lot of these other companies to speak out against this. A little bit more than Gearbox, which is actually based out of Frisco, Texas. When you get down to it, a significant number of these companies are not based, like Google's not based in Texas. Let's see, for instance. So it's pretty easy to sign on to these things. And in this instance, like Microsoft is in Redmond, Washington, for instance. Microsoft owns LinkedIn, so that's kind of an exaggeration there. Apple's out of California. It's really hard in this case to lean the other direction and say this is just a bunch of slacktivist SJWs too, because this is literally talking about actual policies and speaking out against actual political policies. It turns these 60 plus companies into effectively lobbyists more than they already were, or at least shows that they sometimes lobby for certain changes in laws more than they usually do, because usually that's all done in secret in backroom deals. But yeah, this feels like more of the direction that SJW should go if these companies are going to do SJW things. It doesn't feel like it's just a cheap pot, although for a lot of companies probably is just a cheap pot with no real teeth in it. It's not like these 60 plus companies are saying we're not selling our products in Texas anymore or anything like that. And it's not like these 60 plus companies are saying we're donating to the lawyers who are going to sue these policies out of existence. But yeah, if you have on one hand some crazy slacktivist SJWs saying all the video game animated characters should be morbidly obese and completely unfeminine as blobs, and otherwise you're fat phobic. And then on the other hand, you have actual CEOs of the company going, no, here's a real law that affects real people and we don't agree with, and we vehemently disagree with these actions and these laws. One affects real people, while the other is just some kind of level of insanity, in my opinion, that to affect people's ways of thinking in some kind of crazy propaganda, which would just never really work. Like the obese acceptance movement in particular is something that nobody's going to really buy into when there's actual scientific evidence that being obese is unhealthy and should not be idolized. Being like ridiculously thin is also unhealthy, and in fairness, the way fashion and photography works is incredibly harmful because it shows these anorexic women who are real women and are being pushed to maintain their anorexia, and they're propagating the idea that that is a normal body weight, BMI. They actually don't use BMI anymore. You shouldn't use BMI because it's still not an accurate enough resource. You need more of a water displacement, bone density type experiment as far as to get an accurate idea of someone's weight or healthiness as far as muscle and bone density and all. But yeah, if SJWs were going to start ranting about the way people are depicted in photography and in fashion, that would be a more realistic argument compared to ranting about things in video games. But they know they can't win those arguments, and they can't get a foot in the door and influence anybody in those fields. Only video games are new enough and, frankly, run by crazy enough people to let SJWs influence them. But they will eventually. I'm sure SJWs will eventually try to move to every industry and affect everything. Moving on, we have the fall list cleanup. We have something here called Placebo Love as a visual novel. And it has only 8 reviews from September 2021. I think at that point we can just remove this from the fall list. And then PJ's Mask Heroes. Yeah, I'm gonna leave this kids games on the fall list even though they don't have any reviews. Well, actually no, I think we can remove that because it has 6 reviews and it's averaging 63, so it's not particularly that good. Yeah, it very well may be the case that the Lego games, the good Lego games on Steam, are the only kids games worth owning. We have a game called Pizza Geist, as in like Pizza Ghost. There's some visual art style aesthetics here that catch my eye, but you can see it's mixed reviewed, so that can leave the fall list also. Pizza Apocalypse, on the other hand, is apparently a card collecting game. It's free to play. It has 30 reviews, so I'll put that on the wish list. Although, at a certain point, I should just play it. I guess it's easier to keep free games on the wish list, though. This Pixel Lot game looks kind of like a 2-pixely RPG game, and it doesn't have enough reviews, so that can leave the fall list. But for the 10 or so games we look at, and the 5 that we may actually remove from the fall list, we probably added 7 to the fall list. So there might be an argument to do a fall list cleanup at some point in the future, but I could probably put that off for a very long time. These Pixel Game Maker series don't have any relevancy, not enough reviews, so that makes it very easy to remove them. Even if there is one based on anime characters and anime shows, that still doesn't give enough reason to keep it on a follow. Pixel Cup Soccer is rated very positively. Alright, this might be the soccer game to get. And yeah, play one game, Pixel Cup Soccer. I guess the real question though would be, is Pixel Cup Soccer 17, the latest one. Yeah, it came out November 1st, 2021, and so I wonder if the 17 doesn't stand for a year. It doesn't seem like it does. Yeah, and then Picture Cup Soccer Ultimate Edition. It's also rated very positively. And it is in early access. And it is being published by a different publisher. Interesting. So at some point the publisher changed their name. Does there really need to be two different versions of the game? No. Really seems like it is just two different versions of the game. And then we have a picture art coloring book. How many pictures are included in this? For what price? Free to play, actually $11.99. Doesn't seem to show a specific number of pictures, so there's no real telling there. Seems like there would be quite a lot, but it may not be as many as you think. I guess it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, though. This is not something I would do, even though it does seem like you can just add your own pictures to it as a thing. I guess that's probably why I had this on the fall list, is because you could add your own pictures. Yeah, I think you put this on the wish list if at any point in the future I need to make a picture coloring book. This would probably be the one to think about getting, but that is more an if than a when. It's worth mentioning, Monolith is still pretty much the only company that does this. They've updated their speedrun limited leaderboard with new world records for Fear 2, and I think that's Claw. In this game, I think is Blood. Yeah, Blood, Claw, and Fear 2. I don't even know what Blood and Claw are. And the Monolith games that they do have speedruns for, not really a lot of them, but you would imagine there would be speedruns. But it would be very easy for other companies to encourage that kind of things. Encourage speedrunning and keep people's minds on their older games without having to actually make new games, which at a certain level Monolith should be working on making new games, and probably are, but they're being slow about it, as much as any company is fairly slow about making new games. Alright, I'm scrolling down my Twitter feed and I think we're good. I can happily announce once again, but this was like the same case Wednesday, and this is what's really weird is Wednesday I was able to live stream Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel for 3 hours and have no problems at all, and then I went and tried to play the Lego game and it immediately crashed. So there is definitely something about the way the Lego game uses the video card driver compared to the way Shadowverse does it. Shadowverse obviously is not pushing things particularly hard as far as 3D rendering of models, and is very possibly using a different like DirectX version compared to the DirectX 11 version of Lego Worlds. Yeah, I'm still definitely hoping everything was fixed and I just needed to reinstall the video card drivers. And hardware-wise, my computer is back to being normal. And I'll have to live with maybe slower RAM, which is... It is something I definitely feel while playing LEGO Worlds, but that, again, may just be LEGO Worlds, but it does seem significantly slower to load from level to level. Alright, well, we've been going 3 hours and 5 minutes. I've dropped insignificantly small numbers of frames, which you always drop a few frames. 124 missed to rendering lag, which is 0.0%. 96 due to encoder lag, which is 0.0%. 0 frames dropped as far as networking. If anything, I probably should turn up the bandwidth at which I live stream these videos to a higher quality, like with my new internet service provider. That is something certainly to consider. Speaking of low percentages, the least common achievement on LEGO Worlds is 0.05% or something like that. Basically, nobody has gotten it. It's really laughable. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.